Good morning and welcome to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. I hope everyone is doing good on this Monday morning. It's a very, very wet day here in the UK. But as always, we're back with all of your latest Manchester United news. We've got so much to get into on today's show. We're going to be talking and reacting to a story about Jim Ratcliffe exploring the options for Mason Greenwood. We'll also be talking a little bit about the pursuit of Guirassy and a bit of a battle with some other clubs who apparently are trying to sign him in the January transfer window. A little bit about the takeover, about when that will be announced. Also, obviously, just talking a bit about Manchester United in general, about where we think we are, what the next steps are. Lots and lots of stuff to get into. As always, do make sure to have your say in the comments section. And please do smash a like on the video and subscribe. Right, let's get straight on into it. Let's start off with this story about Mason Greenwood then. This is coming out from Fabrizio Romano, so very, very good source, as we all know. And Fabrizio is reporting, I think this was late last night, he said, Jim Ratcliffe has not yet made a decision on whether he'll bring back Mason Greenwood or not. The idea is to take some time to let Greenwood play for Getafe where he is on loan, and then in 2024, March or April, the idea will be to discuss the position of Greenwood based on his performances at Getafe and other factors. Manchester United want Greenwood to focus on Getafe, to perform there and do his best on loan. Then there is a possibility to decide his future in 2024. So, I mean, this story from Fabrizio is ultimately saying that Jim Ratcliffe hasn't closed the door on Mason Greenwood. I know under John Murta, Richard Arnold, it looked very much like Mason Greenwood was going to be gone forever, didn't it? Although, arguably, if they didn't want him at the club, why would they not just get rid of him permanently? They could have released him from his contract or tried to sell him. So the fact that they loaned him out, the fact that they're paying for him to have a villa over in Madrid, obviously where Getafe are based, they've supported Mason through this whole process. And I really would not be surprised, to be honest, if Jim Ratcliffe brings Mason Greenwood back. That will be another 6 months or so from now. He's obviously doing very, very well in La Liga. He scored an absolutely beautiful goal. I think it was last weekend against I can't remember who it was against, but if you haven't seen the goal that he scored last weekend, it was very, very nice. He's had a really, really good season considering he hasn't played football for I think about 18 months. He's got 4 goals and 3 assists in 12 matches. He's averaging a goal or an assist every other game at the moment. So he's doing very, very well. Do I think he'll come back? I mean, at the moment, I'd say it's the $1 million question, isn't it? Will Mason Greenwood come back to Manchester United? I think it's 50-50 personally at this point. I'm not really too sure which way it could go. I think the fact that Jim Ratcliffe is reportedly exploring this option shows that they clearly want him to come back, but they probably just want to wait a little bit. They want to see what the kind of public response is like. Maybe people's opinions will have changed if they do it in certain ways. It's very, very hard to say, isn't it? If he was to come back right this second, I think that maybe that wouldn't be a good look for Jim Ratcliffe just as his first point of action. But I think maybe a little bit further down the line, I think once, maybe he does an interview, maybe, more information gets put out into the public domain or something like that, then I think you could easily see Mason Greenwood back at Manchester United personally. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think Mason Greenwood will come back? And do you think this is something that that Jim Ratcliffe will do? Or do you think this is just another blip in the road and maybe it will just be like this forever where we're constantly talking about it and then eventually he might just leave as a free agent or something? I'm going with 50-50 at the moment. I think from a footballing perspective, I think there's absolutely no doubt that he's probably better than any of our attacking players at the moment. Genuinely, he's better than Antony, he's better than Rashford, and he's also better than Højlund, let's be clear. So I will say that. He's better than any of the other players we have in those attacking lines. Let's have a look at what people are saying this morning. Al says Greenwood is definitely better than Sancho and Antony. Yes, I agree with you there, mate, 100%. What else have we got? CRG says bring him back. He will outclass Rashford, Antony and Martial. Yeah, I mean, the thing is as well, right? What we all have to remember is Anthony Martial will be gone in the summer. That is 100% the correct decision. Anthony Martial has, I think, 6 months left of his contract. His contract expires in June. He should have been got rid of 5 or 6 years ago. I just can't believe that we still have people like Anthony Martial at the club. He's on 250 grand a week. He's lazy. He's injury prone. He doesn't seem to care. And I think if anybody watched Sky Sports yesterday for the Man City Tottenham game, it was very, very interesting after the game. Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher and Mika Richards were all talking about the situation at Manchester United. And Jamie Carragher and Roy Keane completely threw Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial under the bus. They were saying that they're both a disgrace pretty much. Just like I was saying to you guys on the show yesterday morning, I said, Marcus Rashford is branded as this local lad, as this, the people's hero of Manchester, but he doesn't even bother to track back. He doesn't defend. He doesn't work hard. And, Anthony Martial is a similar person to that. Obviously, Anthony Martial is not from Manchester. So you kind of think like, well, he clearly doesn't love the club. He clearly is just here for the money. But you think with Marcus Rashford that, he would love the club more than anything, and he would, at the very, very least, run back and defend. He's not even willing to do that, and I think it's interesting, and I think that it'd be very, very difficult from a sporting perspective for Jim Ratcliffe to look at this situation and be like, well, we have so many good, we're so struggling in those attacking areas. Sancho's obviously going to leave. Anthony's not really worked. Rasmus Højlund's been good in the Champions League, but it's not really started in the Premier League yet. And Marcus Rashford's had an absolutely terrible season, let's be honest. So it's very, very difficult. Richard says it will divide the supporters, the staff who threatened to walk out if he was allowed to return, and the playing staff, yet more chaos and more circus. Yeah, I do agree with you, mate. I said this in the summer, that it would be an unnecessary distraction for Erik ten Hag if Mason Greenwood came back. That was in the summer. But we never know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. If Mason Greenwood's gone, if Erik ten Hag's gone and it's a new project, a new start, maybe it isn't so much of a distraction. I think in the context of this season, it would have been a really, really big distraction. Although without Mason Greenwood, we still had a terrible season. So you can't really give that as an excuse. Andy says, I would get rid of half of this squad. I am disgraced by them. I can honestly say Martial is the worst player I've seen in a red shirt since watching them since 1984. Yeah, mate, Martial is a disgrace, yeah. To be on 250 grand a week and literally be throwing your hands up at your manager because he's telling you off for not running, it's a disgrace. The thing is, though, what I will say, I can kind of see where Jadon Sancho's coming from with the, some people are treated different to other people. I think Anthony Martial was probably thinking, well, Marcus Rashford's not tracking back. Like he was finger pointing. He's probably thinking, why are you not shouting at them? Why are you shouting at me? Which I think is a bit of a lazy excuse, but I do kind of get it in some ways. If somebody's telling you off and then there's somebody directly next to you who's doing exactly the same thing, and then you get Erik ten Hag coming out in the press conferences, back in Rashford, saying, yes, we're 100% behind him. He's going to keep playing. He's going to get back to where he was before. It's like, it must be quite frustrating for the other players, like the Sanchos who are getting dropped. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. Let's have a look what else people are saying in the chat. Chris says, how long does it take to know that Rashford and McTominay are totally not good enough, but they keep getting picked? Mate, I don't know. I really, really don't know. Michelle says, Erik ten Hag allows his personal feelings to interfere with what's best for the club. Now, that's a good point, and that's taken me onto something. So I saw somebody on Twitter. It's quite a long post, so let me read it out to you, but I think it's really, really interesting. This is just what somebody I follow on Twitter had put up yesterday. So they say this. This is about Erik ten Hag. It says, I have been saying this for a long time. The players are the main problem, and that's a fact. I 100% agree with that. But this doesn't justify how bad Erik ten Hag's decisions and man management have been. Okay? He says he had Ronaldo, the idol of most of our young players. A great manager would have found a way to work with him. Ronaldo could have helped him change the mentality of these players and raise the standards, but instead he got rid of him. Now, I think that's a really, really interesting point, and I do actually agree with that in some ways, because we heard all of these stories coming out of Manchester United when Ronaldo joined, saying, he was really, really instilling a mentality into a lot of them, even with stuff like diet and how hard they were working. He was the last to leave the training ground. He wouldn't have desserts. I know all this stuff sounds a bit stupid, but, if Manchester United has been breeding complacency for the last 10 years, where people are lazy, people doing a half-assed job, I kind of get that. The guy then goes on to say he has Rafael Varane and Casemiro, two very professional players who have won everything in professional football. And he decided to call them out publicly. Obviously, he called out Varane And he called out Casemiro, didn't he? He said Casemiro came off at half time because we wanted to play more football. You know, he then goes on to say he could have built a winning team if he had built around Ronaldo, Varane and Casemiro, who are serial winners with elite mentality. Still, instead, he chooses the side of the spoilt brats who sacked 3 previous managers. And I think that is very, very damning, you know. He did have people with elite mentalities available at his disposal. You know, the Ronaldos, the Casemiros, the Varanes, even David De Gea, you could say to some extent. But instead, you've got Johnny Evans starting instead of Varane. You've got McTominay starting instead of Casemiro. You've got Rasmus Højlund starting ahead of Ronaldo. And you've got Onana starting ahead of De Gea. He's got rid of the 4 players who probably were the only ones who had any sense of elite mentality in that whole squad, you know? None of the people in that squad have won anything. When you look at the team that started against Newcastle, okay? Their best trophy they've ever won is probably like the League Cup, genuinely. Like, there isn't any serial winners in that team anymore. He then goes on to say it's all a consequence of his own actions. He chose to side with players who have absolutely no idea what it means to be successful, and I agree with that, to be honest, to some ways, you know. And maybe this is the bigger question that we all need to ask ourselves: is Erik ten Hag able to manage these bigger players with the bigger egos? And I'll be honest with you, right? I don't think he is. I think he seems to be managing Marcus Rashford as if he is this world-class player. Oh, I'll play him every single minute. Yeah. Zane says you can't build on a 37-year-old and 2 30-year-olds. You can in the short term, though, mate. You know? So at the moment, if you look at our squad, you know, you've got Marcus Rashford, who's not young anymore. He's 26. I mean, that's still quite young. You've got Martial, who's about the same age. Like, you've got all of these people who are on the way out. Andy says Casemiro, Varane, Sancho, Anthony, Lindelof, Evans, Van der Beek, Martial all need to be got rid of ASAP. Yeah, I think at this point now you've literally got to get rid of probably 50% of the squad realistically, and have a complete fresh start. Will that be under Erik ten Hag? I'm not sure, to be honest. I think, you know, the next 5 or 6 games will be the make or break for Erik ten Hag. I'll say this as well, right? If Erik ten Hag does go, I'm not going to blame him, to be honest. I still think this is down to the players. I think it's down to the poor recruitment. I think it's down to the lack of, you know, top management at that level of the CEOs, the directors of football. And I think that the same thing will just happen over and over and over again. I think it'll be the same cycle, rinse and repeat. So, yeah, I mean, we've had Jose Mourinho, we've had Van Gaal, we've had Oli. We've tried all of these different managers with all different types of techniques, and it hasn't worked. So I think we, you know, I don't know. I don't know where we go from here, to be honest. I watched the Man City Tottenham game yesterday. Even though Man City didn't win, like, watching those types of teams is like actually watching football. Watching Manchester United is not like watching football. I can't even describe what it's like. It's so poor because some of those players, especially the attacking ones, they just don't try. They don't work hard. And that's the bare minimum that you expect from a footballer, is that they give 150%. You saw Son yesterday against Man City defending for probably 90% of the game, you know, constantly. And it is just frustrating, you know, because we do have some good players. They just don't seem to care. Mila says, do you think Erik ten Hag will start Rashford and McTominay in the Chelsea game? Mate, 100%. 100%. What else have we got? Fred says it's not if, it's when. Yeah, I kind of agree to some extent. Al says if Erik ten Hag gets fired, then Sancho will stay at the club. Fair enough. Chris says it's amazing that we talk about how our players are always outworked every game. What are they being coached every week? And if they're not bothered, why does Eric pick them? I mean, that's a very, very good point. Like, if we're all sat here frustrated with Marcus Rashford for not running back, surely Erik ten Hag, being 10 metres away from the players on the pitch, you know, can see that they're not working hard, but yet he still decides to pick them. Darren says, I'll back Erik ten Hag, but what is worrying is no perceived change in tactics. Is it coming from Ajax where he expects to play certain way and win all the time? Yeah, I hear you, mate. Milas says, we're only missing Casemiro and Martinez. There is no progress in the last 18 months. I mean, that's not entirely fair. You know, when you look through that team, you're missing Casemiro, Martinez, Eriksen, obviously Sancho. Whether you like Sancho or not, he's still a £75 million player that's not there. You're missing Ahmad. You're missing Mason Mount. You're missing 7 or 8 first team players, or who should be first team players. Let's see what else people are saying in the chat. I'll come back to the chat in a minute, actually. Let's talk a little bit about Guirassy then, shall we? So the headline this morning is that apparently Manchester United, Newcastle and AC Milan are all in the race to sign Guirassy in January. I think my mindset on this Guirassy guy's changed a little bit. Like, I think he's all right, you know? I think he's got 15 goals in the Bundesliga, second best to Harry Kane. I think he's okay. Is he going to turn Manchester United into a title-winning side? No. Is he going to get us a few goals and maybe scrape us 5th or 6th? Maybe. Like, yeah, I don't know. And I think we need to look at the bigger picture here. I think we need to look at how secure is actually Erik ten Hag's job. If they're 100% going to keep him for the whole season, no matter what happens, then maybe you get him. But if there's any sniff that potentially they're going to replace him, I would rather just not spend any money in January. I'd rather wait and actually then see who the new manager might be and actually get players they want. And to almost spend the January window planning, getting rid of people, getting rid of Donny van de Beek, getting rid of Martial, getting rid of Sancho. You know, there's probably 3 to 5 people who 100% are going to leave. That needs to happen first before we start bringing in like random 27-year-old strikers from the Bundesliga who have only ever had one good season and thinking that's going to, you know, be the missing piece of the puzzle. We've got to plug so many holes in this team at the moment. You know, the defence, the midfield, arguably a right back or a left back, a striker, wingers. Like, we almost need a whole new team, I think, genuinely. From that team that started against Newcastle on the weekend, Onana, whether you like it or not, we've got to at least try and make work for a bit longer because we've just paid 50 million euros for him. Harry Maguire should go in the summer. Luke Shaw, I like. Diogo Dalot, I think, is a backup at best. Wan-Bissaka, I think he's good, but I think we need an attacking option as well. Bruno Fernandes, obviously, you keep. McTominay should go. Mainu, you keep. Martial, go. Rashford, I wouldn't care if he goes now, to be honest. And Garnacho, you keep. So from that team that started on the weekend, I genuinely would only keep Luke Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, Fernandes, Mainu, and Garnacho. I'd probably keep 4 or 5 of those 11 players. The rest of them have no place at Manchester United for me. And then you go to the bench. Varane, I think he'll go. Van de Beek, I think, obviously he's going to go. Pellistri is a good backup. Bayinda is a backup. Lindelof, maybe a backup or could go. Reguilon could go. Amrabat, 50-50 about, but I'd probably say could go. Højlund, obviously you keep. And Anthony, if we got our money back for Anthony now, I'd sell him in a heartbeat. If someone offered us 100 million for Anthony, I would take it. But obviously that's never going to happen. My point being here, from the whole of our squad, I think you've maybe only got like 3 players that are actually good enough to be part of a project going forward. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. Mila says, people who protect Erik ten Hag, is it because he is so good at managing United or you don't want to start the process again? I think, obviously I can only speak for myself, mate, but for me, I think it's just the starting the process again is the issue for me. I would much rather this. I would much rather we get rid of 5 to 10 players and then bring in younger people, you know, I don't know, Todibos, the Antonio Silvas, you know, you bring in people all around the age of 20 and then give it a try and see what happens. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then get rid of Erik ten Hag. I just feel a little bit, you know, when you look at that team that started on the weekend, most of those players have been here for a long time. I mean, literally, the only player who started on the weekend who is a new signing was Onana. Literally. That was the only one. Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Luke Shaw, Dalot, they've been here for years. McTominay's been here for years. Kobe Mainoo's obviously just broken into the team. Garnacho, Bruno and Rashford have been here for years, and Martial's been here for about 10 years. So it's very difficult to criticise Erik ten Hag 100%. Obviously, everybody deserves criticism in some way, but when you look at the team that's available there on Saturday, was it Saturday or Sunday? Saturday. Like, most of those team have been here for a long time. We know that most of that team threw other managers under the bus. We know that most of that team have a weak mentality. So it's hardly surprising, really, is it? Mila says, I bet Eddie Howe would get the best out of Højlund, Garnacho and Mainu. I mean, I will say this, though, right? The thing with Newcastle, okay? Eddie Howe's doing a great job. Amazing job. But Newcastle, as soon as the new owners came in, they changed everything behind the scenes. They got the sporting director, Dan Ashworth, who was obviously at, I think he was at Brighton before. Yeah, they completely changed everything. And that's why they're doing so well now, because they brought in the elite staff behind the manager. The manager is, of course, important, but the manager isn't everything. You know, it's what the most important bits are is the scouting team, the directors of football, the CEO. And we don't have that at the moment. Ours is just a mess. So it's very, very difficult. I could easily see Erik ten Hag, going to a Bayern Munich and doing well, going to a Real Madrid and doing well, ultimately going to a well-run club and doing well. I think that Manchester United is probably the most difficult club in the world to manage, because the expectation is this high. The actual behind-the-scenes management is at rock bottom. You're fighting an uphill battle constantly to try and actually get stuff, But that's just my opinion. Somebody says Erik ten Hag is not good enough. We can't defend him anymore. He is a baby coach. Please bring Greenwood back, okay? Demon says if Erik ten Hag was actually doing something new and dropping the players that need to be dropped, and we were still losing or playing horrible, I would back Erik ten Hag. Yeah. Andy says Pep and Klopp could not get a tune out of these rubbish players. I agree with you there, mate. 100%. 100%. I don't think he would either. I don't. But right, I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. I will be back this evening about 6 o'clock. I hope everyone has a nice Monday, whatever you're doing. Thank you so much to everyone who's watched the show today. Please do make sure to smash a like on the video before you go. Please do subscribe. Bottom right-hand corner. Thank you so much to everyone who's watched. Have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you later.